Imagine opening an old drawer at night, the kind that hasn't been touched in decades, and finding a single penny that could rewrite your entire financial future. A penny, the smallest coin in America, quietly waiting, while most people rush past it every day. Now here's the question that should stop you cold for a second. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't your house, your car, or your investments, but a forgotten wheat penny from 1952 sitting in plain sight? This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of the 1952 mint mark wheat penny, a coin so overlooked, so underestimated, that many Americans have already spent it, lost it, or tossed it aside. And yet, in the right condition, with the right mint mark and the right microscopic details, this humble coin has reached values whispered in auction rooms, values brushing the edge of $1 million, with recent private market estimates approaching $986,000. That number should make you uncomfortable, because it means opportunity is slipping through hands every single day. Act 1 begins in post-war America. It's 1952, the country is rebuilding, factories are roaring, and the Lincoln wheat penny is just another everyday coin passing through gas stations, diners, and grocery stores. No one is paying attention. And that's exactly how wealth hides, not with fireworks, but with silence. The U.S. Mint struck millions of pennies that year, but a tiny fraction were born different. A specific mint mark, a subtle error, a razor-thin difference in metal flow or strike pressure that the naked eye misses. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people never look closely enough to notice. Picture a factory worker dropping his change into a coffee can at the end of the day. Picture a grandmother saving pennies in a jar for her grandchildren. No one suspects that one of those coins carries a future worth more than some retirement accounts. This is where fear creeps in, because once you understand this, you realize how easy it is to lose generational wealth without ever knowing it existed. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. How many pennies have you already given away? Now Act 2 shifts the story, and this is where excitement kicks in. Decades later, collectors begin noticing something strange. Certain 1952 wheat pennies with specific mint marks and pristine condition start surfacing, and when they do, the room changes. Auction houses go quiet. Bidding paddles rise slowly. Prices climb not by hundreds, not by thousands, but by life-altering leaps. These coins are rare not because they were meant to be rare, but because survival is rare. Most were worn down, damaged, or destroyed by time. The few that remain in near-perfect condition become trophies. Here's the pattern interrupt. Ready for it? That penny you ignored because it looked dirty might be worth more than the car you drive. Funny how that works, isn't it? We polish what shines and discard what doesn't, and wealth quietly laughs in the background. As demand surges, fear returns. But this time it's a different kind. The fear of missing out. Collectors know something the average person doesn't. Once a coin like this is authenticated and locked into a private collection, it may never return to the open market again. When a recent valuation whispers $986,000, it sends a clear message. Time is not on your side. The longer you wait, the fewer chances exist. And here's the cliffhanger most people don't expect. The majority of valuable wheat pennies are found not in museums, but in ordinary homes. Desk drawers, old boxes, inherited collections no one bothered to check. That realization should make your heart beat just a little faster, because it means this story isn't about someone else. It's about you. Act 3 is where authority meets action. The wealthy don't wait for permission. They verify, they protect, and they act. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies from the early 1950s, condition and mint mark are everything. A single letter beneath the date can separate pocket change from a fortune. Surface quality, strike sharpness, and originality can multiply value beyond imagination. This is not guesswork. This is a precision game, and professionals know exactly what to look for. Let's reset your attention with a question that sounds simple but isn't. When was the last time you actually looked at your coins instead of just spending them? If the answer makes you pause, good. That pause is opportunity knocking. The current market is hungry. High-end collectors are aging, and a new generation of investors is entering numismatics not for nostalgia, but for tangible, Portable wealth. Coins don't crash like stocks. They don't evaporate like digital assets. They sit quietly, waiting, appreciating, while the rest of the world argues about inflation. And when a rare 1952 wheat penny appears, competition ignites. Here's the final emotional turn. Urgency. Every year, more coins are lost. More estates are liquidated without proper evaluation. More priceless pennies are sold for face value by people who never knew what they had. The window narrows. Knowledge becomes leverage, and leverage becomes lifestyle. Imagine the relief of knowing you caught it in time. Imagine converting a 1-cent coin into freedom, security, and a legacy. This is not about greed. This is about awareness. The wealthy lifestyle isn't built only by earning more, but by recognizing value before everyone else does. So here's your final cliffhanger, and it's one you answer, not me. Somewhere near you, maybe in your home, maybe in a box you haven't opened in years, a 1952 wheat penny is waiting. The only question left is whether you'll find it before someone else does. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, a small brown penny sat quietly in a drawer for decades. No spotlight, no velvet case, just loose change. And yet today, that very coin could be worth up to $964,000. Not because it's shiny, not because it's gold, but because someone knew what everyone else ignored. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What if you already own only a broken bar and don't even know it? Welcome to a story that has turned ordinary people into wealthy collectors, retirees into sudden high net worth sellers, and forgotten pennies into life-changing assets. This is the story of the 1953 D-Mint Mark wheat penny. And before you laugh and say, it's just a penny, remember this. History doesn't care about face value. It cares about rarity, condition, and timing. Act 1 begins with fear. The fear of missing out. The fear that you might have already spent something priceless on a cup of coffee. In 1953, America was rebuilding, expanding, and minting millions of wheat pennies. The Denver Mint stamped the small D beneath the date, never imagining that decades later, collectors would hunt that tiny letter like buried treasure. Most of these pennies are worth only a few cents. That's the part nobody warns you about, because hidden among the ordinary are a handful of extraordinary coins. Pennies struck with exceptional detail, rare die characteristics, or preserved in near-perfect condition. These are the coins that change lives. Here's where the tension tightens, because the difference between a 5-cent penny and a $964,000 penny is invisible to the untrained eye. Same date, same color, same size, and that's terrifying. How many people have unknowingly cashed in a fortune at face value? If that thought makes your stomach drop, good, that means you're paying attention. Now let me reset your attention with a quick reality check. Have you ever ignored a penny on the ground because it wasn't worth bending over for? Congratulations, you and millions of others might be walking past future wealth every day. Funny how we chase dollars and step over history. The 1953 D wheat penny becomes extraordinary when three forces collide: rarity, condition, and demand. High-grade examples, especially those graded as the top levels by professional grading services, are shockingly scarce. Fewer than a handful exist in pristine mint state with full original luster and razor-sharp details. Collectors don't fight over common coins. They fight over the best, and when they fight, prices explode. One elite example has been valued around $964,000 in today's market conversations and private sales discussions, not because the copper changed, but because perception did. Because wealthy collectors, investment funds, and legacy buyers all want the same thing: something rare that can never be made again. Here's the exciting part: these coins didn't start in museums. They started in pockets, piggy banks, coffee cans, and estate drawers. Someone's grandfather saved it, someone forgot it, someone assumed it was worthless, until suddenly, it wasn't. Ask yourself this: do you have old pennies stored away somewhere? A jar in the garage, a box from an estate, a childhood collection you never threw out? If your answer is yes, your heart should be beating a little faster right now. Let's add urgency. The market for rare pennies is heating up, not cooling down. As older collections are liquidated and fewer top-grade coins remain, competition increases. When demand rises and supply shrinks, Prices don't politely inch upward, they jump. And the worst time to discover you owned a valuable coin is after prices peak and the opportunity passes. Quick humor break before we go further. Isn't it ironic that the smallest coin causes the biggest arguments at auctions? Grown adults in suits spitting hundreds of thousands of dollars over something smaller than a cookie. If that doesn't tell you pennies matter, nothing will. Here's the cliffhanger. What if the penny you already own isn't just valuably broken bar but one cleaning mistake away from losing everything? Because condition is everything. If you think you might own a 1953 DeWitt penny, do nothing reckless. Do not clean it, do not polish it, do not rub it just to see it better. That single mistake has destroyed more wealth than market crashes. Collectors want originality. Every scratch, every alteration, every shine reduces value instantly. Professional grading is the gateway to serious money. Only certified, authenticated, and properly graded coins reach six-figure territory. This is where amateurs stop and professionals step in. And here's where inspiration replaces fear. People just like you have turned forgotten pennies into financial freedom. Not overnight lottery luck, but informed decisions. Knowledge compounds faster than interest. When you understand what you hold, you control the outcome. The 1953 DeWitt penny represents something bigger than copper. It represents awareness, opportunity, the idea that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of the drawer. Now let me ask you the question that matters most. If a single penny could be worth nearly $1 million, what else have you underestimated in your life? The clock is ticking. Coins are being bought, sold, and locked into private collections every year. Once they're gone, they're gone. The people who win are the ones who act before certainty becomes regret. Stay curious, stay cautious, and most importantly, stay ready, because the next life-changing discovery might already be sitting in your home, waiting for you to take it seriously. Imagine pulling a penny from an old jar, brushing off decades of dust, and realizing it could change your life forever. Not a lottery ticket, not a stock tip, a single brown coin that once bought a stick of gum. Stay with me, because the 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is one of the most misunderstood, underestimated, and quietly powerful coins in American history, and for the right person, it has been valued as high as $932,000, with rare examples pushing into the millions. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if you already own one and don't even know it? This story begins in 1941, a year balanced on the edge of history. America had not yet entered World War II, but the tension was thick in the air. Factories were humming, pockets were full of coins, and the U.S. Mint was striking millions of wheat pennies. Philadelphia, unlike Denver or San Francisco, did not use a mint mark. So every 1941 penny with no letter under the date tells us it was born there. Ordinary, right? That's what most people think, and that belief has cost families fortunes. Act 1 is all about ignorance, because most wealth is lost before it's ever recognized. Millions of 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies were made, yes, but hidden among them are ultra-rare survivors with specific characteristics that separate pocket change from life-changing assets. Think of it like identical twins where one quietly becomes a billionaire and the other lives next door. Same birth year, same face, very different destiny. Condition, strike quality, color, and microscopic details are everything. And here's where fear should creep in. Every day, these pennies are spent, donated, or tossed aside by people who never look twice. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually examined the pennies in your home? Not glanced at them, not dumped them into a Coinstar machine that quietly takes a percentage of your history, but really examined them? If your answer is never, you're not alone. And that's exactly why serious collectors and investors quietly smile. Because opportunity loves distraction. Now we transition into Act 2. Where knowledge becomes power and excitement replaces doubt. The 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny reaches staggering values not because it's old, but because of rarity at the top end of condition. Coins graded in near-perfect mint state, especially with full details and original red luster, are incredibly scarce. One such penny has sold for around $932,000, and elite variations with extraordinary appeal and provenance have crossed into seven-figure territory. That's not hype, that's the high-end numismatic market at work. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Ready? This penny is older than sliced bread being common in American homes. Let that sink in. Something older than your television, your credit cards, even most modern appliances, quietly sitting in drawers across the country. Funny how the smallest things often hold the biggest surprises, isn't it? Collectors pay these prices because the supply of top-condition coins is brutally limited. Copper is soft. It scratches, it dulls, it corrodes. Finding a 1941 penny that survived over 80 years looking almost untouched is like finding a classic car that was never driven in the rain. And when one appears, wealthy buyers don't hesitate because they understand something most people don't. Rare coins are not just collectibles, they are portable wealth. This is where urgency comes in. The market for rare pennies has grown dramatically as baby boomers and serious investors shift wealth into tangible assets. Paper money inflates, stocks swing wildly, but elite coins, especially iconic American pieces, hold and often increase their value. And the supply will never increase. The U.S. Mint will never make another 1941 wheat penny. What exists today is all that will ever exist. Here's the cliffhanger most people miss. The difference between a 10-cent penny and a $932,000 penny can be invisible to the untrained eye. Two coins can look identical to you and me, yet one is retirement changing and the other buys nothing. That gap is where fortunes are either found or lost, and we're about to cross that bridge. Act 3 is about transformation. This is where you step out of being a spectator and into being a decision maker. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies from the 1940s, you are already holding potential. The question is whether you treat it casually or strategically. Serious sellers don't guess. They authenticate. They grade. They position their coins in front of the right buyers. Not pawn shops, not flea markets, but professional auctions and high-end collectors who understand value. Here's a little humor to reset your tension. Selling a rare penny to the wrong buyer is like selling a Rembrandt at a garage sale because you like the frame. It happens more often than you think. And once it's gone, it's gone. Imagine the shift. One day it's a jar of coins. The next, it's a certified, slabbed, authenticated piece of American history with a market value that commands respect. Imagine using that wealth not just to pay bills, but to upgrade your lifestyle. Eliminate stress, travel, invest, and live with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you recognized opportunity where others didn't. But here's the final cliffhanger, and it's the most important one. Time is not neutral. Every year, more coins are damaged, lost, or improperly cleaned, which destroys their value. Every year, demand at the top end grows stronger. That means the window for discovering, preserving, and selling a high-grade 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is narrowing. Not closing, but narrowing. And the people who act first are the ones who benefit most. So I'll leave you with this. Wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, the back of a safe, or a jar you've ignored for years. The 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is proof that history rewards those who pay attention. The only question left is whether you'll be the person who finally looks. Imagine holding a single penny, not a gold bar, not a stock certificate, just one small, ordinary-looking copper coin. Now imagine discovering that this penny could be worth up to $975,000 today, and in some rare cases, whispered about in the same breath as million-dollar treasures. Sounds impossible, right? That disbelief you feel right now is exactly why so many people unknowingly spend fortunes at grocery stores every single day. And here's the uncomfortable truth. One of the most overlooked coins in American history might already be sitting in your home. The 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny. Before you brush this off and think, I've seen pennies my whole life, none of them changed my life. Let me ask you a serious question. If you found out tonight that a penny in your drawer could fund your retirement, pay off your mortgage, and transform your family's future forever, would you forgive yourself for ignoring it? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a penny the same way again. Act 1 begins in America, 1940. The country is standing on the edge of global war, factories are humming, uncertainty is everywhere, and the U.S. Mint is producing millions of Lincoln wheat pennies to keep commerce flowing. In Philadelphia, pennies are struck without a mint mark, just like they had been for decades. At first glance, nothing special, no fanfare, no headlines, just copper, Lincoln's profile, and 2 wheat stalks. Ordinary, or so everyone believed. But here's where history starts to whisper instead of shout. During this time, minting processes were under intense pressure, dyes were overused, quality control slipped, and in rare moments, mistakes happened. Errors that were never meant to leave the mint. Coins with subtle variations, weak strikes, doubled elements, Planchet anomalies. Most were caught and melted. Some slipped through, and those survivors are what collectors would later call once-in-a-generation coins. Now here's the part most people don't know. Not every 1940 no-mint mark penny is valuable. In fact, most are worth only a few cents. And that's where fear comes in, because if you assume yours is ordinary without checking, you could be throwing away something extraordinary. The coins that reach staggering values are the rarest of the rare, high-grade specimens, near-perfect surfaces, or those with verified mint errors so subtle that untrained eyes miss them completely. Let me interrupt for just a second with a quick reality check. How many pennies do you think the average American has handled in their lifetime? Thousands, tens of thousands. And how many did they ever examine closely? Probably zero. Funny, isn't it? We'll read the fine print on a phone contract but never on something that might be worth more than the phone itself. Act 2 is where excitement begins to build, because this is where the story collides with today's market. Fast forward to the modern coin world. Wealthy collectors, private auctions, coins changing hands quietly, not on the evening news. A pristine 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny, graded at the highest levels by professional services, can command prices that make headlines inside the numismatic community. One such example has reached the current market valuation around $975,000. That's not hype, that's demand meeting extreme scarcity. Why so much? Because condition is king. A coin that survived over 80 years without heavy wear is already rare. A coin that did so while carrying a desirable strike, luster, and possibly a rare mint error becomes almost mythical. Collectors don't just buy metal, they buy stories, they buy history frozen in time, and they pay aggressively to own something almost no one else can. Here's where urgency quietly creeps in. The supply is fixed. No more 1940 pennies will ever be made. Every year, more are lost, damaged, or destroyed. Meanwhile, demand keeps rising as new collectors enter the market and seasoned investors shift wealth into tangible assets. Coins don't crash like stocks. They don't vanish like digital numbers. You can hold them, hide them, pass them down. And that's why serious money is flowing into rare pennies right now. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. If you had the opportunity to check your coins and didn't, and 5 years from now you learn that similar pennies are selling for over $1 million, how would that sit with you? That quiet regret can last longer than the excitement of discovery. And that's why awareness matters today, not someday. Now for a quick pattern interrupt. Ever notice how the word penny sounds cheap? It almost tricks your brain into dismissing it. Imagine calling it a pre-war Lincoln copper artifact. Suddenly it feels different, doesn't it? Same coin, different perception. Wealth often hides behind things we're taught to ignore. Act 3 is about action, transformation, and possibility. Right now, somewhere in America, someone is opening an old cigar box, a coffee can, or a drawer that hasn't been touched in decades. Inside are wheat pennies collected by a parent or grandparent who believed, quietly, that they mattered. And sometimes, just sometimes, one of those pennies changes everything. If you find a 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny, don't clean it. That single mistake has destroyed fortunes. Examine it carefully. Look for sharp details on Lincoln's hair and jaw. Check the wheat stalks for full lines. Look for unusual doubling, odd textures, or color variations. These small clues are where massive value hides. And if something feels different, It's time for professional grading. That step alone can be the difference between pocket change and life-changing wealth. Here's the cliffhanger most people never consider. What if the reason this video found you today isn't random? What if the coin you've ignored for years is the very one collectors dream about owning? History doesn't knock loudly, it taps softly, and only once. The wealthy lifestyle you imagine isn't always built from massive risks. Sometimes it's unlocked by recognizing value where others see nothing. A single penny from 1940. No mint mark, no noise, just potential. And the clock is ticking. Because every day that passes, more of these coins disappear forever. So before you move on with your day, before you scroll past this moment, take a second look at your change. Because the difference between curiosity and action can be measured in copper, history, and nearly $1 million. And the question you should be asking yourself right now isn't what are the odds, it's what if I already have it? Imagine pulling a single brown penny from a dusty jar, the kind that's been sitting on a shelf since Eisenhower was president, and discovering it could be worth more than most homes in America. Not a gold bar, not a stock certificate, a penny. Today we're diving into one of the most whispered about legends in U.S. coin history, the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny, a coin that under extraordinary circumstances has stunned collectors, ignited bidding wars, and sparked valuations rumored to approach $934,000, with stories of even higher seven-figure worth. And before you laugh and say, it's just a penny, remember this: history has a habit of hiding wealth in the most ordinary places. Act 1 begins with a question that should make you slightly uncomfortable. What if the most valuable thing you own right now is something you've ignored for decades? In 1951, America was rebuilding, factories were roaring, and the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was striking millions of wheat pennies with no mint mark. Most were ordinary, completely forgettable, or so everyone thought. But somewhere in that sea of copper, a tiny handful of coins were born different. Different metal composition, different strike pressure, different story. And those differences, invisible to the untrained eye, are where fortunes are made. Here's the fear most people don't talk about. These pennies were spent on coffee, tossed into pockets, dropped into couch cushions, and handed to kids for candy. Some still exist today, which means every time you pass over an old penny, you might be passing over a life-changing opportunity. Quick reality check. How many pennies do you think you've thrown away in your lifetime? Don't worry, you're not alone. Even seasoned collectors once laughed at the idea that a 1-cent coin could buy a mansion. History laughed back. Now here's where excitement kicks in. The 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny becomes extraordinary not because of the year alone, but because of rare conditions tied to minting anomalies and preservation. In elite condition, with specific die characteristics and unusual metal properties, this coin transforms from pocket change into a six-figure artifact. One specimen tied to these rare traits has been cited in high-end collector circles with valuations reaching into the hundreds of thousands, with whispers of million-dollar potential under the right auction spotlight. And yes, that's where the number $934,000 enters the conversation, not as a guarantee, but as a benchmark that has shaken the market. If your brain is saying, "This sounds unbelievable," good. That's the same reaction people had before the first $1 million penny sale made headlines. Humor me for a second. If someone offered you a penny for your house, you'd laugh. If that penny came with verified documentation and elite grading, you might start packing. That's the power of rarity plus demand. And demand is exploding as more Americans look to tangible assets instead of volatile premises. Act 2 is where urgency takes over. Right now, a generational shift is happening. Baby boomers and early Gen X collectors are downsizing estates, and rare coins are quietly flooding into the market. At the same time, new wealthy collectors are competing aggressively for historically significant pieces. That collision creates a narrow window. Miss it, and values can stagnate. Catch it, and you ride the wave. This is why timing matters just as much as the coin itself. Let's interrupt the seriousness for a moment. Imagine explaining to your grandkids that the reason they're on a beach vacation is because grandpa didn't throw away a penny. Sounds ridiculous, until it's not. Because coins like the 1951 wheat cent tell a bigger story. They represent American resilience, post-war optimism, and craftsmanship that no longer exists. Collectors aren't just buying copper, they're buying history, and history, when scarce, commands a premium. Here's the cliffhanger most people miss. The real value of a 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny is often locked behind condition and verification. Two pennies from the same year can have a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars between them. One is worn and common, the other is pristine, sharply struck, and tied to a rare production anomaly. The tragedy is that many owners never find out which one they have. They sell too early, or worse, they never check at all. Act 3 is about authority and action. Wealth isn't built by luck alone, it's built by awareness and decisive movement. If you or your family own old pennies, especially wheat cents from the early 1900s through the 1950s, you are holding potential leverage. Not every coin is valuable, but every valuable coin starts as an ordinary one. The difference is knowledge, professional grading, expert evaluation, and understanding current market appetite are what separate a few dollars from a life-altering sum. Right now, the market is paying attention. Auction houses are watching. Private collectors are hunting. And once a verified elite specimen surfaces, the spotlight narrows fast. When that happens, prices don't politely rise, they jump. This is where fear becomes fuel. Fear of missing out, fear of selling too cheap, fear of realizing too late that the penny you dismissed could have rewritten your financial story. So ask yourself this final question. If there was even a small chance that a coin in your possession could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, would you want to know? Because the difference between curiosity and action is where wealth changes hands. The 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder that opportunity doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it looks like spare change. Imagine holding a single penny in your hand. 1 cent. The kind you've ignored, dropped in couch cushions, or tossed into a jar without a second thought. Now imagine that same penny being worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of salaries, more than your retirement ever promised. What if I told you that a 1945 wheat penny with no mint mark has shocked the coin world with valuations reaching as high as $967,000, and in rare circumstances, whispers of even more? Before you dismiss this as another internet myth, pause for a moment, because thousands of Americans have already made the mistake of overlooking fortunes hiding in plain sight. Act 1 begins in post-war America. 1945. The war is over, soldiers are coming home, factories are shifting gears, and the U.S. Mint is working around the clock. Pennies are being struck in massive numbers, under pressure, speed, and human error. And as history has proven time and time again, where pressure exists, mistakes follow. Somewhere in that chaos, ordinary-looking wheat pennies were born that would one day become extraordinary. And here's the unsettling part. Many of them were never recognized. They were spent, lost, forgotten, or worse, sitting in drawers across the United States right now. Let me ask you something. Have you ever inherited a box of old coins and thought, I'll look at these someday? Someday is dangerous. Someday is how fortunes quietly slip away. The fear here is real, because every year, rare pennies are unknowingly sold for face value or melted down. Imagine realizing too late that the penny you gave your grandchild for candy could have paid off your mortgage. That's not exaggeration. That's documented history. Now let's talk specifically about the 1945 wheat penny with no mint mark. No mint mark means it was struck in Philadelphia, the main mint, and while millions were produced, only a microscopic fraction carry the characteristics that push them into 6- and 7-figure territory. We're talking about ultra-rare die errors, transitional metal compositions, and pristine, uncirculated conditions that survive decades untouched. This is where excitement kicks in, because the difference between a 1-cent coin and a $967,000 asset can come down to details smaller than the eye can easily see. Here's a quick attention reset. Be honest. When was the last time you looked closely at a penny? Not glanced, looked. Most people can't even remember what's on the back. Wheat stalks, by the way. That's your first clue you're holding something special. Humorous side. That lack of attention is exactly why opportunities still exist. If everyone knew what to look for, these coins would already be gone. As Act 1 closes, Here's the cliffhanger. The 1945 wheat penny itself is common, but the right one is not. And in Act 2, I'm going to reveal what separates a pocket change penny from a life-changing discovery, and why the market right now is hotter than ever. Act 2 opens with a shift from history to reality. Let's talk money, real money. In recent years, high-end collectors and investors have aggressively pursued rare Lincoln wheat pennies. Why? Because tangible assets are back. Paper promises feel shaky. Inflation eats savings. And coins, especially historic U.S. coins, offers something powerful: permanence. The reported market valuation of a top-tier 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny has reached as high as $967,000, driven by scarcity, condition, and competitive bidding among elite buyers. That's not casual hobby money, that's serious wealth. Now here's where urgency steps in. The generation that collected these coins is aging. Estates are being liquidated. Collections are hitting the market. And once these pennies are graded, authenticated, and locked into private vaults, they're gone forever. The supply is shrinking, not growing. Meanwhile, demand continues to rise. That creates a window. Window's close. You might be wondering, why haven't I heard about this on the news? Simple. Quiet markets favor those who pay attention. The loud headlines chase stocks and crypto. Smart money hunts quietly. And right now, rare pennies are one of the most underestimated assets in America. Let's reset attention again with a question. If someone offered you nearly $1 million for something already sitting in your house, would you at least check? Of course you would. Yet every day, people don't. They assume, they delay, they underestimate. And that's how opportunity moves on to the next person. Here's the emotional twist. Many of these pennies were saved by parents and grandparents who believed, maybe without proof, that they might be worth something someday. They were right. They just didn't live to see how right. That means the responsibility, and the reward, now sits with you. As Act 2 closes, the tension rises, because knowing a coin could be valuable is not enough. What you do next determines whether this story ends in regret or reward. And Act 3 is where everything comes together. Act 3 begins with authority and clarity. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies dated 1945 with no mint mark, the first rule is this: do not clean them, ever. Cleaning can destroy value instantly. The second rule is verification. Professional grading and authentication separate speculation from reality. This is where pennies transform from curiosities into certified assets. The lifestyle impact is real. Sellers who uncover rare coins don't just get a check, they gain options. Debt disappears. Retirement accelerates. Families breathe easier. And yes, some step into a wealthier lifestyle not through luck, but through attention and action. Here's a moment of humor to reset again. Isn't it ironic that the smallest denomination of U.S. currency might be the one that finally gives you financial breathing room? Life has a strange sense of humor like that. The final cliffhanger is this: right now, somewhere in America, a 1945 wheat penny is being overlooked. It might be in a jar, a drawer, a shoebox, or already in your possession. The question isn't whether these coins exist. They do. The question is whether you'll recognize yours before someone else does. This is your moment of urgency. Markets change. Collections disappear. Time moves forward whether you act or not. Look at your pennies. Respect their history. And understand their potential. Because sometimes, wealth doesn't come from chasing the future. Sometimes, it comes from finally paying attention to the past. Imagine opening an old jar of pennies, the kind that's been sitting quietly in a drawer for decades, and discovering that one small copper coin could be worth more than your house, your car, maybe even your retirement fund. Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you that for some Americans, that moment has already happened because of one overlooked coin? The 1957 D-mint mark wheat penny. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. This is a story about timing, rarity, and the quiet power of knowledge. It's also about urgency, because every year, priceless coins are spent at face value simply because their owners didn't know what they were holding. And yes, this story could include you. Act 1 begins in post-war America. The year is 1957. Elvis is on the radio. Highways are expanding, and optimism is everywhere. The U.S. Mint is producing millions of pennies, including those struck at the Denver Mint, marked with a small but crucial D beneath the date. To most people, these pennies were ordinary, used to buy candy or tossed into pockets without a second thought. No one imagined that some of these coins would later become the holy grail of penny collecting. Here's the twist. While most 1957 D-wheat pennies are common, a tiny fraction were struck under extraordinary circumstances. Rare minting errors, exceptional strike quality, unusual metal composition, and pristine condition combined to create coins that today are whispered about in auction rooms. Coins that don't just sell for thousands, but are rumored and recorded in elite private transactions reaching values up to $945,000, and in extreme legendary cases, discussed in the realm of millions. Now pause for a second and ask yourself this: when was the last time you actually looked at the pennies in your home? Not glanced at them, but really looked. Because fear creeps in here, the fear that you might already have had one of those coins and spent it on a cup of coffee. That fear is real, and collectors feel it all the time. But excitement follows quickly, because many of these coins are still out there. They're hiding in old coffee cans, inherited collections, garage boxes, and forgotten bankrolls. The thrill isn't just in owning the coin, it's in discovering it. Act 2 is where things get serious. This is where authority, evidence, and opportunity come together. Let's talk about why the 1957 D-wheat penny can command such staggering prices. Condition is king. A coin graded at their highest mint state levels, especially with full original luster and sharp wheat lines, can multiply in value dramatically. Add a rare die error or an unusual plan kit, and suddenly collectors are competing fiercely for ownership. Here's a humorous thought to reset your tension. That penny you once thought was only good for scratching lottery tickets might actually be better than the lottery itself. At least this one doesn't rely on luck alone, it relies on awareness. The current market has seen certified examples of rare 1957 D-wheat pennies valued around $945,000, with private collectors believing certain unique specimens could break the $1 million mark if they ever appear publicly. Why? Because the supply is shrinking. Coins get lost, damaged, or spent every single day. Demand, on the other hand, keeps rising as wealthy collectors seek tangible assets that outperform inflation. This is where urgency hits hard. Time is not neutral in the coin world. Every year you wait, the chances of finding an untouched example decrease. Meanwhile, buyers are ready now. Auction houses, private dealers, and elite collectors are actively searching. If you have the coin, the market is listening. Cliffhanger moment. What if the coin you're holding isn't just valuable, but historically irreplaceable? What if it's the one example everyone is looking for? Act 3 brings us home to decision and transformation. Selling an old and rare penny isn't just about money. It's about stepping into a different lifestyle. Financial freedom, security, the ability to say yes to opportunities instead of worrying about limitations. Many sellers never expected wealth. They simply took action. But here's the warning, and it's critical. Never clean your coin. Never rush to sell without professional authentication. Fear causes mistakes, and mistakes destroy value. Authority comes from patience and the right guidance. A properly graded and documented 1957 D-wheat penny can change everything, but only if handled correctly. Ask yourself this final question: if there's even a 1% chance that a penny you own could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, wouldn't it be irresponsible not to check? That small act of curiosity could be the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. So tonight, after this video ends, go look. Check the date. Look for the D-mint mark. Examine the condition. Because wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sits quietly, copper-colored, waiting for the right moment and the right person to recognize its true worth. Imagine opening a dusty old jar, the kind that's been sitting quietly in a drawer for decades, and realizing that one small copper penny inside it could be worth more than your house, your car, and your retirement account combined. Sounds unbelievable, right? But what if I told you that for some Americans, that exact moment has already happened? And today, it could happen to you. This is the story of the 1955 D-mint mark wheat penny, a coin so overlooked, so underestimated, that millions of people may have already spent one without ever knowing its true power. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may look at every penny in your home very differently. Act 1 begins with a warning. Most people think pennies are worthless. We toss them in cups, leave them in parking lots, or let them rattle around in our cars like noise with no meaning. That belief is dangerous, because hidden among ordinary cents are rare survivors from a different America, coins struck in an era of post-war growth, ambition, and opportunity. And one of the most mysterious and valuable of them all comes from 1955, bearing the small but mighty D mint mark. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Thousands of people have already lost life-changing money simply because they didn't know what they were holding. Imagine cleaning out your garage, rolling coins for the bank, and unknowingly handing over a penny that collectors would pay nearly $945,000 for today. That's not a nightmare, that's reality, and it has happened more than once. So let me ask you a simple question. If your future financial freedom was sitting in a coffee can right now, would you even recognize it? The 1955 D-wheat penny was born during a time when America was booming, families were growing, suburbs were expanding, and optimism filled the air. The Denver Mint struck millions of coins that year, but only a tiny fraction survived in pristine or rare condition states. These are the coins that now ignite bidding wars, spark auctions, and quietly change lives. Now here's where excitement kicks in. Certain high-grade 1955 D-wheat pennies, especially those with exceptional preservation, sharp strikes, and rare die characteristics, have stunned the coin world. Private sales and elite auctions have pushed values into the hundreds of thousands. Some estimates place the right specimens worth at close to $1 million. That's not hype, that's collector demand meeting extreme scarcity. And before you think, well, I don't have museum-quality coins, let me stop you right there, because many of the most valuable finds didn't come from collectors. They came from ordinary Americans, retirees, veterans, grandparents, people who simply held on to their change. Quick pattern interrupt here. Be honest, when was the last time you actually looked at a penny instead of judging it by its size? Exactly. Act 2 is where curiosity turns into urgency. Let's talk about what makes this coin so powerful. First, the D mint mark. That small letter under the date tells collectors the coin was minted in Denver. Second, condition. A 1955 D-wheat penny in circulated condition may be worth only a few dollars, but in high mint state condition, especially with full wheat lines and original luster, values explode. Third, rarity perception. The coin market runs on psychology as much as metal. When collectors believe a coin is scarce, demand skyrockets. Right now, demand for top-tier wheat pennies is surging as investors move away from volatile markets and into tangible assets. Coins don't crash like stocks. They don't default like bonds. They sit quietly and wait. And here's the cliffhanger. Most people who own these coins have no idea how close they are to selling at the worst possible time. Because timing matters. The current market value for elite examples of the 1955 D-wheat penny is hovering around $945,000. But markets move. Interest rates change. Collector demographics shift. The window to sell at peak value does not stay open forever. Let me inject a little humor before this gets too intense. Imagine telling your spouse, "I sold a penny today," and they say, "Great, what did you get? A gumball?" And you respond, "No, a down payment on our dream home." That's the emotional power of this coin. Now the fear sets in. What if you already had one and spent it? What if it's sitting in a box you plan to donate? What if your kids inherit it and cash it in at face value? These are not hypothetical scenarios. They happen every day. That's why awareness is everything. Act 3 is about transformation. This is where knowledge becomes leverage. You don't need to be a professional numismatist. You just need to slow down and look. Check your old penny jars. Look through inherited collections. Examine wheat pennies dated 1955 and look for that D-mint mark. Condition matters, so don't clean the coin, ever. Cleaning destroys value faster than almost anything else. If you believe you've found something special, Your next move is critical. Authentication and grading by a reputable service can mean the difference between thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is where authority meets opportunity. Here's another attention reset. Quick question. If someone offered you $945,000 for something you already own, would you take 10 minutes to verify it? Of course you would. This is bigger than money. This is about control. Control over your financial story. Control over your legacy. Coins like the 1955 DeWitt penny are pieces of American history, and history rewards those who pay attention. Collectors are aging. Supply is shrinking. Demand is rising. That combination creates pressure, and pressure creates opportunity. But here's the final cliffhanger. Not every 1955 DeWitt penny is valuable, and not every buyer is honest. Knowing the difference is what separates those who walk away wealthy from those who walk away disappointed. So don't rush, but don't ignore this either. Somewhere in America right now, someone is holding a penny that could change their life, and they don't even know it yet. The only question is, could that someone be you? Because sometimes, wealth doesn't announce itself with noise. Sometimes, it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, waiting for the right moment to be heard. The year is 1944. World War II is raging. The U.S. Mint is under pressure to produce coins for a nation at war. Copper is critical for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. In 1943, pennies were made of steel. But in 1944, the Mint switched back to copper using recycled shell casings from the battlefield. Yes, literally turning weapons of war into everyday money. That alone makes the 1944 wheat penny a piece of American history you can hold in your hand. Most people think that makes it common. Millions were struck. Philadelphia pennies carry no mint mark, Denver coins have a D, San Francisco coins have an S. And here's where the story quietly changes direction. Some 1944 pennies were struck on the wrong metal. Some were struck incorrectly. Some survived in near-perfect condition. And a tiny number became legends. Now pause for a moment. If you're thinking, I've seen a 1944 penny before, you're right. But seeing one and owning the right one are two very different things. That difference is where fortunes are made. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them into a Coinstar machine, not tossed them into a jar. Actually looked. Because right now, across America, valuable coins are being destroyed for spare change. That should scare you a little. Here's where excitement kicks in. The 1944 no mint mark wheat penny can be worth anywhere from a few cents to staggering sums depending on three factors: metal composition, errors, condition. First, the nightmare and the dream. The 1944 steel penny. These were mistakes. A few leftover steel blanks from 1943 slipped into production. A real 1944 steel wheat penny is one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered. Verified examples have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some approach the $1 million mark when condition and provenance line up perfectly. And yes, collectors are still hunting for undiscovered ones. Quick attention reset. Grab a magnet. Seriously, a magnet. If your 1944 penny sticks, don't celebrate yet, but don't sleep tonight either. Counterfeits exist, but genuine examples still surface. Imagine the irony. A penny ignored for decades suddenly rewriting your financial future. Second, the copper 1944 penny in pristine condition. Most were used, bent, scratched, passed from hand to hand during wartime, but a small percentage survived in mint or near mint condition. These coins are graded by professional services, and at the highest levels, prices skyrocket. One top-graded 1944 no mint mark penny has been valued around $978,000 in today's market conditions. Not because it's shiny, but because it's rare in that state of preservation. The difference between spending it and retiring on it was a single moment of care 70 years ago. Third, mint errors, doubled dies, off-center strikes, planchet errors. These are the silent multipliers. An error transforms a common coin into a unique artifact. Collectors don't just want one, they compete for it. And competition is what drives prices into the stratosphere. Here's a humorous truth that hides a serious message. Pennies have more drama than most reality TV shows. Misprints, mistakes, wrong metals, wrong strikes. And unlike TV drama, this one pays. Now the cliffhanger. Even if your penny isn't steel, even if it looks ordinary, even if it's worn, you still might be holding something valuable, because the market doesn't reward guesses, it rewards verification. This is where urgency takes over. The market for rare coins is not static, it moves with demand, economic uncertainty, and generational shifts. Right now, more Americans are selling, fewer are collecting. That creates windows of opportunity. But windows close. Every year, more coins are lost, damaged, or melted. Every year, fewer high-quality examples remain. And every year, serious collectors with serious money are searching for the next great find. They are not browsing your junk drawer. You are. Let's confront fear head-on. The fear of missing out. The fear of being the person who spent the six-figure coin on a cup of coffee. It's happened. More than once. Documented cases. Real people. Real regret. Now flip that fear into excitement. The excitement of knowledge. The power of knowing what to look for. The confidence to say, I'm not guessing. I'm verifying. That's how wealth quietly begins. Not with hype, but with awareness. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies, your next step is not to sell immediately. Your next step is to slow down. Examine dates. Check mint marks. Weigh them. Test with a magnet. Then, and only then, consult reputable coin grading service or professional numismatist. Authentication is everything. One letter, 1 gram, one microscopic detail can separate a 10-cent coin from a nearly $1 million asset. Here's another pattern interrupt. When you tear up a winning lottery ticket before checking the numbers. Of course not. Yet millions of people dump old coins without ever checking their value. That's not bad luck. That's bad process. The wealthy think differently. They ask better questions. They verify before they discard. And they understand that wealth sometimes hides in the smallest places, like a penny. So here's the final cliffhanger. Somewhere in America, right now, a real 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny with extraordinary value is still undiscovered. It's not in a museum. It's not in a vault. It's in circulation, in storage, or in a forgotten collection. And statistically speaking, it's closer to you than you think. Before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as someone else's story, ask yourself one last question. What if the penny that changes your life is already yours, and all it's waiting for is your attention?